Government Order of the Day, number 1.
Kaikoura Titai o Marakura Marine Management Bill, first reading.
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Kaikoura Titai o Marakura Marine Management Bill be read a first time. Mr Speaker, I nominate the Local Government and Environment Select Committee to consider this bill. It is part of this government's blue-green agenda to improve New Zealand's marine management while we also strengthen our economy. Mr Speaker, it creates a new marine reserve, a new whale sanctuary, a new seal sanctuary, 5 new customary fishing areas and tightens recreational catch limits in the Kaikoura area. Its provisions will not only benefit Kaikoura's
would
whales,
members leaving the chamber
dolphins.
Please show some courtesy to the member trying to address the business of the House. It is
Mr.
good conduct
Speaker.
and being considerate of others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Nick Smith.
Its provisions will not only benefit Kaikoura's whales, its dolphins, its seals, its albatross, its rock lobster, its shellfish and finfish, but will also safeguard and sustain that region's $134 million a year tourism industry. The rugged Kaikoura Peninsula, its snow-capped mountains, stand out as a jewel within New Zealand's coastal environment. The deep canyon of Kaikoura makes its waters the most biologically productive in the world at depths over 500 metres, supporting a stunning diversity of marine wildlife. I'm advised by scientific expertise in marine conservation that the level of marine life at those depths is 100 times greater than the next most prolific area, emphasising just how special that Kaikoura marine habitat is. Our marine mammals like our sperm, humpback, blue and southern white whales, the orca, the dusky and Hector's dolphins already know this long before our scientists surveyed this area, as can be seen by how often they hung out in these rich waters. Its waters are also support our largest New Zealand fur seal breeding colony. Mr Speaker, since 1988, when the first whale watching boat was launched, Kaikoura has gained a global reputation for this unparalleled marine biodiversity. The region has witnessed a rapid and successful expansion of that marine tourism, including dolphin swimming, seal encounters, snorkelling, as well as fishing. But until now, Kaikoura's marine treasures have not been subject to any formal protection. Recreational fishing, charter fishing and legal fishing practices have meanwhile been placing unsustainable pressures on local fish stocks, especially in respect of the cherished local crayfish. The ambition to better protect Kaikoura's marine environment goes back at least 2 decades. When I first engaged on this issue in the 1990s, the divisions in the community were as deep as the ocean canyons adjacent to the Kaikoura coast. It has been so encouraging over the past few years to return to Kaikoura, to meet with local conservationists, fishers, iwi, to see them working together and to see the package of marine protection measures that have now been agreed by consensus. I, Mr Speaker, want to particularly acknowledge Colin King, the MP for Kaikoura, who early in his career and even before he was elected, persuaded me to don a wetsuit, flippers and a snorkel in the middle of winter to help make the case for marine protection here. His advocacy for these marine protection measures has been consistent. I also want to acknowledge my other colleagues who have played a significant role, particularly the Primary Industries Minister, Nathan Guy, and his ministry, Amy Adams, the Minister for the Environment, whose ministry has also helped fund the Te Korowai process, and those officials who have diligently worked since these proposals were presented in 2012. Mr Speaker, the Kaikoura Marine Strategy is ultimately the beginning of this bill and is the positive outcome of all of this work. There are 6 key elements of that strategy that are implemented with this bill. The first is a new marine reserve, the Hikurangi Marine Reserve, covering 10,400 hectares over the deep Kaikoura Canyon. The proposed marine reserves includes that area that is the critical habitat for the resident sperm whales. In that area, it is an absolute no-take zone in respect of no fishing, no mining, no marine farming, and no exploration. The second major initiative is a whale sanctuary covering 4,500 square kilometres and extending out beyond the territorial sea into the exclusive economic zone. The sanctuary will protect whales by placing restrictions on seismic survey activities in this area. It prohibits those high-level seismic survey works associated with petroleum exploration, but, Mr. Speaker, it quite deliberately allows those lower level of seismic work, for instance, to be able to investigate the sort of risk from tsunami that's been highlighted in technical reports released today. Mr. Speaker, a third measure is a New Zealand fur seal sanctuary at Ohau Point. This is the most significant breeding colony on the New Zealand mainland islands for this endemic species of New Zealand. Access to Ohau Point will be restricted, but people will still be able to observe those seals from the existing viewing areas and from water. The fourth element of this bill is the customary fishing areas, which includes 2 new Taiperi local fisheries and 3 Mataitai reserves. This vital cultural element will restore and maintain traditional food gathering areas of special significance to Ngāti Kuri of Ngāi Tahu. It will enable Ngāti Kuri to utilise traditional knowledge and customs to protect those fishing areas. A fifth and important part of the changes in this bill is the tightening of recreational amateur fishing regulations. These will result in reductions in bag limits for the number of finfish and shellfish species. For example, there will be a daily limit on some seaweeds, a reduction in bag limits for teriki, kawai, butterfish, blue moki, as well as prohibiting the take of red moki and requiring Telson clipping for recreational caught crayfish. This will discourage illegal black market sales, as the ability to store quantities of recreationally caught crayfish will be limited. Mr. Speaker, the final part of this package is a new Ministerial Advisory Committee to provide an ongoing role in respect of the conservation and fishery issues in Kaikoura. Mr. Speaker, I want to square off 3 criticisms by opposition members of the Prime Minister's announcement of this bill. The first is from Labour MP Ruth Dyson, who said that the only progress this government making is on low-hanging fruit. I remind that member that the proposal for the Akaroa Marine Reserve sat on the desk of Labour conservation ministers for 9 years without moving, and for her to now suggest that this government only progresses the easy issues in conservation is simply untrue. I also remind Labour and its support partner the Greens that 34 petroleum wells were drilled in the ocean during their term in government without any consents being required or any environmental assessment, and that it is now only under this government, with the establishment of the Environmental Protection Authority and the Exclusive Economic Zone legislation, that we now have a robust system for managing the risks of petroleum and minerals exploration in our vast oceans. And I simply say to members opposite, where were they for the 9 years when that work took place? Mr. Speaker, I also believe it is rather churlish of members opposite to be critical of the size of this new Kaikoura Reserve. It will be the largest marine reserve on any of New Zealand's main islands. It is actually larger than all of the 9 reserves that was created in Fiordland added together. Inevitably, it has involved compromises, but it covers the unique deep canyon off the Kaikoura coast that is most deserving of this high level of protection. Mr. Speaker, I also want to put this bill in the broader context of this government's work in the area of marine conservation. It is our view that the ocean environment, that is 20 times our land area, is the new frontier for conservation. That is why our government this year will pass and put in place a record number of marine reserves, and that we are also progressing very substantive work on a new marine protected areas piece of legislation to enable us to be able to progress these sorts of reserves without the need for special legislation. Mr. Speaker, I would also note the work this government is doing in terms of the Ross Sea, known as the last ocean in the world, in which we are making progress in the international negotiations around the protection of that area also. I am one of those that is proud of not just this government, but this country's record in respect of marine conservation, and I note that the International Marine Policy Journal looked at 68 major countries with marine resources and said that New Zealand's record was the very best in terms of conservation management of our oceans. Mr. Speaker, this is a good bill. A huge amount of work has gone into it, and I commend it to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call